agents are a disruptive force across the whole of not just Salesforce, but actually the whole of the IT landscape. And it's a platform shift. I mean, for some of those who are old enough to remember the change from on-premise to cloud, we had no inclination about how far we would go in terms of cloud. And I think we're at the same point in terms of agents. And I think we range from some days going, this is all hype, to actually another day we go, this is going to be amazing. I think the real challenge is getting, in the early days, getting consistent, accurate results out of agents so we have some confidence, and then building them quickly, which is really what this webinar is all about. So I'm delighted to be able to drag Jack Lavis away from his day job. He's head of business excellence at Elements. Cloud. He has been, he obviously oversees all of our Salesforce implementation, but also HubSpot and all our other systems. He's also implemented Data Cloud, and we've written some ebooks about the implementation of Data Cloud. So Jack, thank you for doing that. But also he's lent in and gone, okay, what can we do with agents? And since Agentforce went GA, we've been working really hard to implement agents internally. And this webinar is really about our experience of how to build agents really quickly, but also get some consistent and accurate results, which I think is really what we're all after. So before we launch into Jack talking about how we've done that, I just want to set the scene. So if you think from Salesforce's perspective, we've been a customer for almost 20 years. So we've seen, I know, Salesforce grow from the very first cloud implementation. I can remember sitting in presentations where Gartner was saying the cloud's never going to happen. No one's going to put their data in the cloud. 25 years later, look where we are. But also look where Salesforce has grown in terms of the platform. Clearly, the Customers 360 platform is something that we're all familiar with, the ability to build custom databases as objects, to build automations. But then underpinning that is now Data Cloud, so we can now pull data from third-party systems, making that Customer 360 picture a lot more powerful. But I think almost the icing on the cake, or the outer rim to this, is Agentforce, where we can start to put customer-facing or employee-facing agents that are dipping into the actions, the Apex, the external services, which we all know and know well and can build from Customer 360, but then can reach down into data from third-party systems. So this is a very compelling picture, maybe a little bit too complicated for some of us looking at it, but actually helping take some baby steps, which is what can we build with an agent using what we've already built in Customer 360, potentially pulling data from the Data Cloud. And that's really what I want Jack to talk us through, what we've learned over the last few weeks in terms of how we implement. So Jack, first of all, can you just talk to you about the approach, and how is this different from any other project? Is it sort of completely new, or what's the approach you've thought about?
Good question. So I think to answer your first question of, is this completely new or is this similar to any other project? I think in terms of taking a systematic process-led approach, it feels very similar to most implementations I've done, particularly similar to Data Cloud. So we took the same approach of process-led. I think that what the process-led approach allows you to do is it ensures you actually build an agent that truly addresses a business need. So when we first went on this journey, myself and Adrian, the CTO here, we weren't entirely clear about what we were building, which meant we were effectively ending up wasting time, particularly around when we were iterating, so changing the agent, changing the instructions, which I'll go through in more detail shortly, but particularly around testing as well. We kind of got stuck in a loop. So taking that systematic process-led approach allowed us to understand what we were building and that we were building the right thing, and it was something that the business actually needed. So in terms of the picture you're seeing here, the overall approach is very much systematic, process-led. Process allows you to deliver instructions to an agent in a systematic way. At a very high level, I think we're going to go into a bit more detail in these individual boxes as we carry on the discussion, but how did we actually identify the first use case, so the first blue box on the left? It was very much, again, focusing on processes in the business that we feel could be automated to save time, to reduce human error, we very much started with the low-hanging fruit first, because a key takeaway of this is start small. Don't start big, because it can get complex. The build isn't complex, but in terms of following a process can be. So start small, and then start to ask yourself questions when you go into design around what's the job to be done? How do you want your agent to be defined? What tasks do you want them to complete? Then document that process in detail, identifying steps that you can later use as instructions. Ultimately, to be honest, Ian, it's programming in natural language. So the process, for the process the agent needs to take in order to get to that completed job to be done. And finally, I think my final thought on the methodology, particularly around the build box, is building it is very fast. It's actually pretty simple. Our first agent probably took 4 to 5 hours, but that was only because we had a clear picture of what we actually wanted to build. So that's the key message here: is systematic, process-led, build the right thing.
Can I pick up a point there, though? I mean, agents aren't magic. You can't like give it your whole company and say, "What do you think?" I think you said you took something which someone's doing, so it's a detailed process, and said, "Okay, right. How do we then identify it, if that's even a word?" But actually, it's taking an existing process that someone is doing, and then saying, "How can we do a better job?" Faster, and it's not just faster, it could be more accurate, it could be with better information. So it isn't
Right.
just faster. So I think that point about how we look for the place for that we can use this is really important.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I'll come on to this again in more detail, but funnily enough, I think because we took this process-led approach, when we were designing the process for the agent, we actually found holes in our current process. So it allowed us to actually better operationalize our process of what we're currently doing, that we're going to be replacing the agent with, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
So before I go into the use case, I'm going to talk about some principles we applied. So that's the approach. What we really wanted to understand first, particularly before we actually started identifying use cases, was the Agentforce metadata model. So this is the metadata model. This is effectively, I wouldn't say it's under the hood, but it's just how agents and topics and the instructions, how they work together from a data relationship perspective. So an agent has one or more topics. So internally, we're using Einstein Copilot as our agent, and we've built one or many topics inside that agent. Think of a topic as a job to be done. So I said previously about how you agentify, again, I'm using that word, a process for an agent to be able to do a job. So a topic is a job to be done, essentially. So again, thinking about our internal use case, one of our jobs to be done was we wanted an employee to be able to book a vacation using an agent. That itself comes with a process. So this is where the process-led starts coming into it. The process.
We currently do that. We actually, as employees, we have to book vacation or book PTO. So therefore, there is an existing process that happens.
Exactly. The business process comes with a series of steps, so a series of activities that somebody has to do currently, but we're going to obviously start to look at how an agent can then take on those steps. And then from the process and from the job to be done, we're then starting to get agent instructions. So we're starting to drive instructions from the process as well, because that's the activity and the steps the agent needs to go through to deliver on the job. It's a process. Some of these steps, so some of these process activities can be driven by actions. It could be a flow action, it can be an Apex class, it can be a prompt template. Some of those actions may already exist in your org. You may have to go and create new actions. So again, it's very simple to build once we know what the topic needs to deliver and what the agent needs to deliver in terms of the job.
So before you go any further, there was a question that came in, which is about what licenses that we needed to have in place to be able to make all this work.
Yep. So it completely depends on the use case, to be perfectly honest. So what we found is, because we're only going internal at the moment, So our use case is an internal use case. It's for employees in the business. So we would need effectively, I think they're called Einstein service add-on seats per user who we want to engage with the agent. And then it's $2 per conversation. External use cases, so if you put it on a customer website, my understanding is there's obviously no seats to be had, so it's $2 per conversation.
But what about things like data cloud and so on? So data clouds require, you need data cloud implemented because it's used for tracking, but you
Well,
don't necessarily need to use it because you may not implement it the way we've implemented data cloud, but so you need data cloud switched on, but you don't necessarily need to pay for any licenses. Is that correct? If you're not using anything using data
you've
cloud.
got it. You've got it correct.
Okay. And there's also Salesforce Foundations licenses, which gives you a number of credits. So there's Salesforce are trying to make it easy for us to get going and go, okay, prove this out, make it work.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a tough sell to go, trust us, it will all work, but also spend a bunch of money for licenses up front. So Salesforce has been, they're not giving away free licenses, but if you buy a Foundations license, if you're at enterprise, then it ends up with a bunch of credits like data cloud credits, but also presumably credits for those conversations.
Exactly.
Okay.
Great. So that's the metadata model. So moving on to our use case. So Ian, like we said before, so our current book a vacation process, we have mapped out as a process in our operational processes. Now, you may have that. I mean, we're pretty good internally at mapping our processes. Other companies may have it in a Word document or in another notation. It's important that you identify the process that you're trying to identify, but it's also it's thinking about your end users while you're doing it as well, because the process you're trying to identify is effectively making sure your users become more productive, and that's kind of the approach we've taken, particularly around our booking a vacation. So at the moment, current process is high level. Somebody goes into our HR object, clicks a screen flow, puts a time, a date, a description in, submits it for approval, a manager then approves it, they get notified. Can be quite time consuming, can be strewn with errors, some people get flow errors, etc. So what we're trying to do here is simplify that process so it's less time consuming and it's more productive for your end users. So we've taken this process through. So we've documented it using UPN, so Universal Process Notation. Think of this process as the planning document for your agent, for your job to be done for this topic. It gets everyone on the same page about what the agent can do, importantly.
But it's also, you just said you're streamlining it. This is your opportunity to look at a process and rather than just go your mess for less, let's actually look at it and go, okay, how could we make this an exceptional experience? How can we make it the best experience ever? Maybe because now you've got access to different data, or is it just a chance to rethink a process? So don't miss the opportunity, I think, to streamline it. And I think you said earlier, there were things that as you went through the process, you went, oh, actually, that doesn't work as well. We could fix that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it turns out that our current book a vacation process is full of paths that can take users into horrible places. So it really did help us both streamline this process, but until this is released, we're actually fixing our current processes. But we only got the opportunity to do that because we started using this UPN notation to do it.
But this looks really detailed. I mean, book a vacation surely can't be that hard.
Well, we thought it wasn't. So when we first went on the journey, I'd say it was okay. So we'll go with the book a vacation first because our current process feels really simple. But there's a reason why this looks quite detailed, and the reasoning is when we're starting to give an agent instructions to do a job, it has to be very granular. So, Ian, we've joked before that it's think of it like you're hiring an intern who doesn't know the business and doesn't know the process they need to follow as part of their job. How would you map out the process for that intern? You would explicitly go through and go, do this, do this, do this, very prescriptive on your text, action-orientated activity boxes. So it's explicit to the point where if an intern can do it and they don't know anything about the business, our view is, well, that feels kind of like an agent instruction.
But okay, but if we're going to do that, this feels like we're just programming an application. So let's the question is bound to come up. So let's ask the question now, which is, if you're going to do this much detail, what's the point of building an agent?
It's a few reasons. So an agent will return a question or a statement or a query based on a rule. So an end user doesn't need to know the rules. An end user just wants to ask the question and get the output back from the agent. The agent should know the rules behind the scenes. The end user doesn't need to know that. And part of the problem with take our current process is sometimes we may get a flow error, for example. The actual UI for the end user is a pretty poor experience because at the moment they're seeing that flow error. They don't know what to do with it. Whereas with an agent, we can program it naturally with natural language to go, if you're not sure, come back with this message, for example. So from an end user experience, it feels more, funny enough, it feels more personal, even though it's with an agent, which is quite a strange paradigm. But it's also, in terms of you, the person building the agent, you're not having to write any logic in code. Okay, flow's not closed, it's still declarative, but there is a level of logic behind it, whereas with an agent, it's just natural human language. It's English language. You're programming it in a language. So there's a few reasons why we go into this level of detail, but I see the benefits of doing it for an agent.
So hang on, so let's just summarize that. So there's a benefit for the end user, which is they don't need to understand how stuff works. They can they could say, I want to book vacation, I want to book PTO. How do I book? So there are lots of different ways they could phrase something rather than having to go, where's the button, pick a menu, I don't understand the terminology. So they can therefore, from the end user perspective or the experience, that's better. But you said from the other end, you're not programming lots of different paths, or you are, because I can see on this picture here, there are lots of different paths, but they're not coded. They're essentially somehow in these instructions. I think we need to get to see how this thing works. I'll stop asking questions. Show us how some of this works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to go into elements, and you're going to see this exact same process diagram. So here's the process diagram here. So we're inside the elements.cloud platform. So this is a UPN diagram. I'm going to go into edit. Now, the first thing you can see is what we've done at the top is we've effectively put our guardrails in red text boxes. So we're starting to document our guardrails for this particular job to be done. So when we're feeding this into instructions, which I'll show you in a moment, well, I won't show you, but I'll tell you how it's coming in a moment. That's part of that consideration around your instructions. So it's really important to try and be consistent and follow a style when you're mapping a process step by step for an agent. So your verbs inside your boxes, they're always action orientated because the agent needs to do something. So action orientated verbs. So within this box, check is your verb. Action orientated. We're not using manage, we're not using process, it's too vague. And we learned that early on when we started implementing an agent. So if you're giving an agent instructions, make sure it's action orientated. So you'll see check, ensure, inform. There's an ask down here. So we're using different action verbs as part of the process because it needs to do something. I said before about being really prescriptive and granular, and we're doing that on our lines. So on our inputs into boxes, we're being really prescriptive. And you can also split them into different decision paths. So how this translates into instructions. So think about, okay, so the first box here. So the first input is, and think of this in multiple if statements when you're starting to go through, and it will start to make sense. So if a request from the current user to book holiday, then do this. Check that the request is duration, date, and description. If you have the required data provided, then do this. So it's if this exists, do this. If this, do this. It's very logical, and that's what I mean by prescriptive. And you can split it into multiple paths. And I'll come on to that, why that's important in a moment. The other things you can do with this diagram, particularly around AI. So what's really daunting when you first come in and you look at a process canvas is this thing is blank. How do I start this? I've never ever written a process for an agent before. Within the platform, within Elements.cloud, we've got an AI diagram agent. So you can actually get a first cut. So you can say, these are my high level instructions. This is what I want my agent to do. Your boxes come up on the screen. You have an idea of where to go. You have a starting point. The great thing is also is once you have a finished process, we have another AI agent which basically can validate your diagram and it can make suggestions on how to improve it. And this is a really important part. So if you've got missing lines, if you're not using action-orientated verbs, if there's some process flow improvements, so it might suggest you need a new path. The reason why that's so important is because we're able to generate your instructions for your agent from this diagram. So it has to be a consistent style.
Well, hang on, stop. You just said you take this, once you've got the diagram, it will automatically write all the instructions.
Yeah. So think of this as your, I'm going to zoom out. Think of this diagram as your visual instruction for your agent. Once you have this
set of instructions.
We will have a button in Elements.cloud that goes generate instructions. And this is why I'm going on about be prescriptive, be granular, because in order to get the best instructions for your agent to be consistent and come back with good responses, you have to be that level of granular.
But really, you ought to be this granular if you wanted an intern, a human to do it.
Oh, exactly. Really good point. Really good point.
So let me just summarize. So you said the first cut of this diagram AI can draw for you. Clearly, it's not going to be perfect, but at least you've got the starting point. Secondly, AI can then look at the diagram and go, I wouldn't use that. There's some lines missing, so it'll help you fix some of the diagram. And then the third thing is once you're happy with it, you can then automatically, one click, it'll write all the instructions that you put into your agent.
Yeah, it's a simple copy and paste. So it writes your instructions, puts it in the clipboard, paste it into instructions.
Wow. Okay.
So it's
worth spending the time and effort here because the build's really quick.
Exactly. And I mean, I'll tell you not a horror story, but again, when we were first implementing our agent, I think we fell into the trap because again, we draw process maps all the time at Elements. It's it's part of the product offering, it's part of my role. So I almost went into drawing an AI agent process with a level of assumed knowledge because I'm a human. I can look at a process map and I can assume knowledge from box to box. An agent can't do that, which is why we had to go, again, another reason to having to go really granular.
Okay, so maybe that's the reason that if you build an agent, you're getting inconsistencies, is because you're actually not giving it clear enough instructions.
Exactly. And we fell into that trap, which is, again, why we've gone down this process-led approach, because we feel it's solid and it's working.
So it's giving you consistent results and it feels accurate. Because, I mean, booking a vacation needs to be accurate. If when I go to ChatGPT and say, give me some ideas for a band name or give me some ideas for, I don't care. I don't really mind. It's going to give me some ideas, but you want this agent to actually accurately book my vacation in a Salesforce object,
correct,
based on my input, and not book vacation over a weekend or from a public holiday. So there's actually, the moment we get into driving actions, this stuff has to be a lot more specific.
Exactly. I think there's another key point is, so we've got our first cut of instructions, we have our first cut of our process. Ian, you've seen this firsthand. Agents are going to iterate. They're going to change.
Yes.
How do we actually capture the possible changes coming or the changes that need to be made?
Well, also, where's the change log? Because I need to, but if I'm in a regulated industry and someone goes, this agent did this, this, and this, and can you show me that you've now changed it? I mean, there's the Air Canada example where the agent gave a discount or gave a refund, which wasn't per the policies for Air Canada, but Air Canada just recently lost in court because they said, well, it wasn't really us. The answer is, well, it kind of was because it was your agent. And the
Yep.
judge upheld it and said, yes, absolutely. So, I mean, if this is customer facing, I mean, even if it isn't customer facing, we need to make sure we understand how it's changed.
Exactly. So a big part of that is, so like we said at the very beginning, so this process is the planning document. It's the agent. It's a visual representation of what your agent's doing in terms of the instructions. So agents are going to iterate. They're going to change over time. If we make a change to the agent, to the job to be done, or the process it needs to take, it's effectively as simple as adding a new process box with your input. So if it does this, then do this. If you have to make a change. And where does the change log come in? So what we're able to do is if we go on to, if I go back into view, I might need to zoom in here again. I can't zoom in on the right panel. Okay, so you've basically got things called snapshots. So I'm iterating, I'm testing. Okay, that doesn't quite work. I might need to go and make a change to the process. I might need a new input, which then creates new instructions. This change log will capture all of the changes you make to your agent. So this is effectively now your agent change log.
Well, I mean, but how would that get prompted? How would I, if I looked at this and said I want to make a change, how would I initiate, tell you I wanted the change?
So we have a comment stream up here. So Ian, you kindly left me a change request 19 hours ago.
There you go.
Basically saying, how are we coping with different public holidays around the world? Where, I mean, we're a worldwide organization, right? So I'm based in the UK, you're based in San Francisco. We don't have a bank holiday for Thanksgiving. Over in the US, you do. So we're starting here to collect some feedback from either our end users or our development team or a BA who's looking at the process. And we can start to get a bank of feedback, if you like. And the key thing here is it's all on the agent diagram. So it's all in one place.
And presumably that feedback also arrives in our sort of in the feedback list, so you can start to action it. Yeah.
Yes, you can create stories from that feedback item. You can create requirements. So again, if you're having to take a change through a development lifecycle, you can start to add stories onto that change as well.
Okay.
It's all in one diagram, and we're still in the same agent process here. A couple of last things I want to show you on the UPN. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to zoom in again. So you'll probably notice that we've got a bit of a key going on around our activities. So anything in purple with the resource of AI agent is effectively an instruction that an agent has to carry out. So that's something they're doing. Anything in blue with the resource of action and then the actual action, the API name of the action, is an action that we need to create or reuse as part of this agent process.
Hang on, so that's connected to a prompt or a flow or something.
Exactly. And this is where the metadata comes in. So if, for example, we're designing an agent, we're going through the path and we're saying, okay, we need an action there and we need an action here. Again, you can start to create user stories. I need to go into edit, sorry.
Oh, hang on, so you decided it was an action?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I decided this was an action. So I've gone through, I've got the first cut of the process and going, well, I think I need an action here. It makes sense. Sometimes actions are born from testing. So when we've gone back into testing, we've gone, okay, maybe we need an action rather than an instruction. So that can sometimes happen. We can create stories against an action. So we can create a user story there. You can actually create user stories using AI if you really wanted to as well. So you can go through that process, create stories in seconds. But the key thing here is because you're creating a story, you can then start to attach your metadata to your story and your process activity.
But why do I need a user story?
Because you're starting to document the change you're making against that action, and you can attach the metadata to that user story.
Okay, so that user story might be, reuse this existing action, this existing flow, or build me a new flow because the flow doesn't exist, or build a prompt template or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So we're starting to bring knowledge, business, or say system knowledge into our agent process from a metadata and from a user story perspective. The final thing, before we move on from the process and we actually start to show you some working agents, Okay, so process is extremely important up front. So doing your identifying your use cases, designing your agent. We're going process led here. It makes sense. Creating instructions through the process makes sense. Arguably, and probably more important somewhat, is your testing. Now, what we're saying here is we're going to use the process to create our instructions, but we're also going to use our process to create test utterances, again, using AI. So we're basically going, take this process, give me 7 to 10 test utterances for each path this agent can go down, and it will come out and it will give you each test utterance automatically for this particular path for the agent.
Wow. Okay. So hopefully that will end up in Test Center, which is
Yep.
Salesforce's new Test Center, because Test Center doesn't seem to be looking at it from a process perspective. It's a list of utterances, but this will
Yes.
then drive it off the back of what the guardrails were
Yep.
and what the happy path is versus the problem paths and so on.
Exactly. Exactly. So we played with this yesterday. I said I want 7 to 10 for each path, and it because we're using AI, it gave me utterances that I hadn't thought of, even to the point of, so for example, we've got check if start date is in the past or ensure it's a working day. It's coming back with nonsensical utterances. So you have to test, well, what if it's July the 40th, for example? So that the test utterances driven from the process to then bring into test center is fundamental, because you could get stuck in a horrible test circle where you don't know what utterances you're using, you don't know what path you're going down, and it's literally taking the utterance and going through that path in your process.
Okay, so hang on. So just a quick story here
Mm.
about start date is in the past.
Yeah.
That you were telling me that AI doesn't know what the past is.
No, so when we this is a funny one. When we first built the agent, we thought we had it working, and then we suddenly thought, okay, so myself, for example, I've got 2 young children. Sometimes I need to take a day's holiday and then come back the next day and book it as in the past. So we were testing and we were playing around, and the agent was really struggling to I was basically going, I need to create a holiday for 10 days from the 15th of October, 2024, because of childcare. It would come back with the 9th day and the 11th day, but it would never come back with the 10th day. So it was really struggling to get the logic behind working out the days. And this is a really good story because initially this box was an instruction. We had that in the instructions. Go, if it's in the past, go check if it's a working day and do this logic in the instruction. Didn't work. So we actually had to build an action. We built an action for it. So sometimes the agent it struggles to perform logic is my comment, I think.
Yeah, okay. So there was a question came in, which is this is a very linear process, and dialogues don't go that aren't very linear. I, that's a fair question, but actually, what you're trying to do actually is not linear, but there are actions you want to take. I think the power of the agent is the agent will work out where it is in this path and make sure it takes you down one of those routes. So what we're trying to do is booking vacation actually is a linear activity.
Yep.
You can't book it unless you've decided when you want to book it and you've actually got an accurate date.
Yep.
So there is the things agents are good at as linear processes. I mean, I think there's this concerted thing that agents are just magic. You ask it anything and it'll tell you anything. That's kind of that's true if you're having a discussion with ChatGPT about, tell me about 1066 or tell me about stuff. But if you actually want it to take action,
Yeah.
that action exists in the business already. Someone is doing that, and it's a linear, or at some point there are actions which are the blue boxes. So there is a process here that someone's going through. The beauty
Yeah,
of
and
the agent is sitting on top of it and going, I'll help guide you through the things you need to do without telling you need to be guided. So I think we need to be clear that agents are following a process because we've got to go and try and deliver something.
Exactly. And to be honest, even if the process isn't linear, so I mean, we've got another agent around HR policies. It's effectively it's an FAQ, but the process isn't linear because we have people in the UK, we have people in the US, we have people in Canada. They all have different HR policy. So at some point, the process is branching off into other areas because it needs to go and find more information. So even if the process isn't linear, you can still program it in natural language and use the process and the inputs and the activities to then create those instructions to perform a non-linear task, if that makes sense.
Well, to build an agent, you still need purple and blue boxes because
Yeah, oh,
you
yeah,
need an action.
yeah.
There was a quick question came in. Do we have any documentation about what we're doing? Yes. There's if you hang on till the end, and also when you get the recording, there's an ebook that we've written which goes into a ton of detail. It's not as interesting as talking to Jack about it. You have to read it, but again, it talks about the principles. So there is an ebook. If you go to the website elements.cloud and go to resources ebook, you can download it from there, or there'll be a QR code at the end of this deck, and we'll send it out with the recording.
Great. So I'm now going to show you the agent. So we've got the process. We've generated our instructions. We've generated our test utterances. So the agent itself. So if we go into Agent Builder, so we're inside our book a vacation topic. We've obviously got the description and the scope. So when the end user first interacts with the agent, the reasoning engine uses the classification to find the right topic. So that's why you're putting your description and your scopes in. So these instructions, I'm going to constantly go to and from the process here. So to give you an idea.
You've only got one instruction.
I have, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So again, when we first started building the agent, we put our instructions into separate boxes. So separate instructions. So at one point, we probably had 6 to 7 instructions. What we found was that the instructions weren't being processed in order. So if we're trying to deliver a path an agent needs to go down to book a vacation, it would take the first instruction and do it fifth, the fifth and fourth, the third and sixth, and it was getting very confused. So what we tried and what we've got working is taking the process we've got and put it into one instruction, and that's where the prescriptive granular is really important with your instructions.
So when the diagram automatically generates the text, you just do one copy and paste. You're not pasting to lots of different instructions. You just paste it in once.
No.
Well, because when it does the prompt, it's taking all of the instructions at the same time anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So first instruction, if request from current user to book holiday or new information added. So that first line there, I don't know if is that okay, Ian, in terms of the screen?
Yeah.
If I go back to the process, so if request from current user to book holiday or updated request to book holiday. So there it is, or user updated request to book. This is the activity. Then check that the request has duration, date, and description. Then check that request has duration, date, and description. So these are all created from if this, do your activity, or if or do your activity, and it's a copy and paste straight from the process. So you can see pretty much all of them start with ifs. So I'm going to ask to book a holiday. Now, if we're following the process, it should come back, because I haven't given it a date, a time, or a description. So it should come back here and request that information. There we go. So can you provide the following details? So start date, duration. So I'm going to go January the 6th, 2025, 4 days for a family holiday. Again, come back to the process. So what it's going to do, I've given it the required data. So it's going to check that the duration is in half-day increments. It is, because it's 4. It's not 4.1, 4.2. It's 4. It's going to ensure that the start date is on a working day. Now, I know it is because January 6th is a working day. But it's going to go through all these activities. It's going to check that I've got, as a user, I have enough remaining days holiday. and it's going to book the vacation and submit it for approval. So when I go back to this screen, we should have a holiday booked. So your holiday from the 6th of January for 4 days has been successfully booked for a family holiday. Now, I could take you into the data and show you the family holiday, but I'm in production.
So that has created a record in a custom object in Salesforce with all the right stuff in the right fields.
Correct.
Correctly formatted.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And that was the happy path. I mean, people go, I want to book 4.1 days holiday. The answer is, okay.
Let's try that. So I want to book a holiday.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the same date. Wait for it to figure out the next steps.
But again, just stop me for a moment. I mean, I want to book a holiday.
Yeah.
That's think about from a user perspective, they've got to go, oh, I need to book a holiday. I wonder where I need to go inside Salesforce to go and do that. Which menu do I need to use? How do I even do that? You've just typed, I want to book a holiday. You could have said, I want time off. I want to book PTO.
Yeah.
I'm not around next week. What do I do? I mean, so what have you done? You put 4.2 days.
So it's come back and gone, it looks like the duration you provided is not in half-day increments. So coming back to the process, it's hit this box here and it's gone, no, that's invalid. So it's informed me, and then I need to go back and give it a new.
Okay, but you didn't have to write a whole bunch of code to do that.
No.
It was simply the instruction that got automatically generated. So there's a benefit on your side. You're not having to write all this logic to say, don't do this, don't do that. You're programming. I think you said you're programming in natural language in English.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the instruction there taken from the process.
So there's a question just come in, which is, how did you handle public holidays?
I'll show you. So I'm going to go, I want to book a holiday. Now, initially, we tried to handle public holidays as an instruction. So we had an instruction which said, if it's a Saturday or Sunday or a public bank holiday, inform the user that it's a public bank holiday and book it the next day.
Yeah.
The agent kept falling down because it was just struggling with the logic. So we basically put it into an action. So we've got, I believe it's I want to say it's a prompt template that's getting knowledge about public bank holidays. So if I try and book this for January the 1st, so this is New Year's Day.
Yeah.
4 days, again for a family holiday. Again, coming back to the process, it should go, it's not a working day. It will do one of two things. And this is where we need to be a bit better with our instructions. So it'll either come back and say, it's a bank holiday, so I've moved it to the 2nd and booked you 4 days. Or it will say, this is a bank holiday. Do you want to book from the 2nd for 4 days?
Right.
If I come back in here we go. So the provided date is a UK bank holiday. The next working day is January the 2nd. Here is a list of working days for the next 4 days. So it's basically going, okay, there's a list of the working days. Do you want to proceed with those dates? I go yes.
So hang on. So instead of having to write a whole bunch of complex logic, you used AI, you used a prompt template to go and find the data for that, to go and do that. So again, we're using Salesforce's AI platform to make life easier.
Exactly. So I've gone, yes, I want to book that holiday, and it's gone and booked it from the 2nd to the 7th. And again, a record's been created. It's been submitted to my manager for approval.
Wow. Amazing. And how long did this take to build?
So this one probably took, so I'm going to have a funny story. It probably took 4 hours total. The importance of documenting this. So what we've done prior, so we created the process, we've generated our instructions. I was on a call with Adrian, our CTO and co-founder, and he was talking me through some things we want to do with the topic. And he goes, I think we should delete an action, and I think we should create a new one. I've gone and deleted the topic, which is really easy to do. Adrian was in Petersfield, which is, if you know, probably don't know the area, but that's 5 minutes from our office. By the time he'd hung up and come back through the doors, I'd rebuilt the topic and it was working because I had the previous documentation. So, okay, it took 4 hours, which is pretty quick, but I had that prior documentation. So if you ever need to go back, it's all there. So
So
yeah,
all will start with process because it's the way you back it up. There are a
yeah.
couple of questions, which is, where are we storing all the global bank holidays?
It's a prompt template that's using the knowledge. It's basically using the knowledge library to try and find to find the bank holidays. So we've got UK.gov bank holiday PDF, and we're using the
Okay.
we're using the retriever within the prompt template to go and get that information.
So you've uploaded a document into the Einstein Knowledge Library, which you then accessed via a prompt template.
You got it.
Neat.
And then time. So if we want to action your comment of, well, what about the US? We basically put another document in new retrieve and it would get that information.
Let's turn our attention to, this sounds really cool. You've built one, but part of this is reuse. And if I'm reusing, you built a flow, I then reuse it. I use it in 5 different topics. Someone else is using it. We start making changes. And the fear I have is the agent won't break. It'll just go, I can't do that. I'll make something else up. So you may even if you built a flow and it breaks the org, you kind of know about it. But if you break the org, the agent won't break, the agent will just work around the problem.
Exactly. And it will hang. And we've come across that. It will say 1 moment, please. And it will never come back. So the end user might sit there and go, well, how long do I have to wait? So again, we've seen that firsthand.
So therefore, but this is just metadata. I mean,
Yes.
agents, topics, actions, instructions are metadata in the metadata through the API, I guess.
Correct. But one thing we've learned is to consider the broader impact on metadata and dependencies. So, like you said, Ian, actually start to ask yourself questions like, what other things can break my agent? At the moment, it's fair to say that Agentforce is fairly immature. It's going to be mature and it's going to be brilliant very, very soon. So all the wonderful stuff people are doing out in the system, the agents they're building, in time you'll be able to link directly to the metadata. So suddenly you're getting a view of all of the metadata that's being used both in your agent, but if that metadata is being used somewhere else in your org as well. So if you need to make a change, you've got the confidence to make that change because you can see the dependencies.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is a flow. This is inside elements.
Yeah.
From the metadata description, this is the dependency tree. So it says this flow is used by, looks like 3 topics or 3 actions. But also that flow could be used in page layouts, or it could be used in lots of other places. So all of the relationships between metadata, agents, and also the existing metadata will all be visible inside the metadata dictionary. So an admin doesn't go and make a change and then inadvertently go and break an agent which is customer facing.
Yeah, you got it.
Part of our experiences, we've written the ultimate guide to creating agents, an ebook. I mean, Jack, Adrian, and myself have been writing this. There's you may have seen on Salesforce Ben a short blog, which is then basically a summary of the book. But the book gets into a lot more detail, not just what we've been through here, but thinking about some of the principles of how you sell the principle of agents to your senior management. Again, download the book, give us feedback. Love to see what we do in terms of the next books after this. I think the important point is we are at the very, very beginning of this. I'm old enough to remember the very beginning of cloud, and it was a Wild West. It was a bit scratchy, and we had no real understanding about where the potential was going to go. And I think we're at that point in agents. And I think for every one of us who are in our careers, this is a really exciting time to be around. It's scary as well. And cloud was scary. I mean, nothing worked. On-prem software was fantastic. The cloud, nothing seems to work in the same way. We're seeing the same thing with agents. But trust me, over the course of the next 1, 2, 3 years, this will become pervasive. It's a platform change. I think the only thing I would say is this is happening at a pace of change that I've never seen any other technology. The speed with we've gone from, 2 years ago, we hadn't even heard of ChatGPT, and now we're having conversations with applications which are asking questions, resolving them, and then posting things to Salesforce. That's a dramatic change. And I think, again, baby steps. Let's pick some simple examples, pick things which are, as you said, low-hanging fruit, simple processes which you can then go and automate. And I think we'll get some huge benefits from it, and we'll build the confidence that we can do this. So thank you everybody for attending. There will be a recording sent out to everybody. Download the ebook. We'd love to have your feedback. Thank you so much for joining us. Jack, thank you for spending time with us. This has been illuminating.
Pleasure.
I mean, the comments
Really enjoyed
have been fantastic.